By the stars, they're at it again, Commander Zyler slammed his clawed hand against the observation panel, startling his subordinate, Lieutenant Grin. Look at this madness. That human is literally piecing a shattered leg back together with sticks and cloth. Through the magnification lens, the scene unfolding on the battlefield was beyond comprehension. Lieutenant Alex Ramirez, the human's newly identified combat medic, crouched beside a wounded soldier. He whistled an infuriatingly upbeat tune as he worked on what was undeniably a mangled leg. The bone jutted grotesquely through torn skin, blood soaking into the ground. Yet Ramirez handled it as casually as wrapping a festival parcel. "Stop recording," Zyler barked at the surveillance team. "No triple record this. The High Council needs to see this insanity." Grin nervously clicked his mandibles, a habit that usually drove Zyler to frustration. Today, however, Zyler barely noticed. Through the lens, Ramirez plunged a syringe into the injured soldier's arm, and the unthinkable occurred. The agonized screams ceased abruptly, replaced by laughter. "Did you see that?" Zyler's voice cracked in disbelief. "They've got some kind of neural override. They can shut off pain receptors." Ramirez grinned at his patient, his hands moving with practiced ease. "Good news, Private Harris. Clean break. 6 weeks, and you'll be lapping the rest of the squad in no time. Probably stronger than ever." Zyler's translator crackled, relaying the human medic's casual words. His stomach churned. "Stronger? Stronger?" He turned to Grin, his scales quivering. "Do you hear this? They don't just recover, they improve. This isn't biology, it's heresy." On the battlefield, Ramirez swiftly bound the leg with rigid materials, his movements confident, like someone who had done this countless times. Meanwhile, Private Harris, undeterred by his gruesome injury, animatedly gestured as if telling a story, his face devoid of despair. Commander Grin's voice wavered, betraying his unease. "Should we reconsider our invasion strategy?" Zyler didn't respond immediately. He watched as Ramirez hoisted Harris onto a transport vehicle, unfazed by the human's calm demeanor. Harris was already talking about physical therapy and rehabilitation concepts that made Zyler's scales crawl. "Fetch me everything on human biology," Zyler finally ordered. "And I mean everything. If these creatures can rebuild catastrophic damage and emerge stronger." His voice trailed off as Ramirez jogged toward another wounded soldier, his determination unwavering. "Well," Zyler muttered, his 4 eyes blinking in succession, "the High Council will have some very difficult questions for our intelligence division." As dusk settled, Zyler couldn't tear his gaze from the impromptu clinic below. Each passing moment revealed another horrifying facet of human resilience, and with each revelation, a gnawing suspicion grew they may have underestimated their opponent in a way that could cost them everything. "Bring in the specimen," Dr. Nexora's sharp voice echoed through the sterile examination chamber. Her excitement was barely concealed as 3 guards dragged in a struggling human soldier. Morgan Ryder, defiant even with his broken leg, unleashed a torrent of creative curses. "You know," Ryder grunted as they strapped him to the examination table. "On Earth, we usually get dinner before this kind of intimacy." Dr. Nexora ignored his incomprehensible humor, her attention riveted to the white casing encasing his leg. "Remove this primitive contraption," she instructed her assistants. Carefully, they sliced away the cast, revealing the battered limb beneath. "Fascinating," Nexora murmured, all 6 of her sensory tendrils twitching. "The damage is extensive, yet the subject is conscious and even attempting social engagement." Commander Zyler stormed into the lab, nearly tripping over his ceremonial cape. "Tell me you found something, Doctor. The High Council demands answers about these self-repairing humans." "You've arrived at the perfect moment," Nexora replied, gesturing to her scanning equipment. "Observe." The scanner projected a 3-dimensional image of Ryder's fractured bone, zooming in on a crack already showing signs of repair. "Oh no," Zyler whispered, his 4 eyes widening. "Is that?" "If you mean evidence of an autonomous self-repair mechanism," Nexora said, her tone tinged with panic, "then yes, The bone, she continued, is actively generating new structural material. This isn't just healing, it's enhancement. Ryder, who had been quietly watching, smirked. Yeah, bones heal. Pretty normal for us. 6 weeks and I'll be good as new. The lab erupted into chaos. Assistants fled, one screaming about weaponized regeneration. Nexora dropped her scanner, backing away as though Ryder had morphed into a living bomb. 6 weeks, Nexora stammered. They can rebuild their skeletal structure in 6 weeks and call it normal. Wait until I tell you about my cousin, Ryder chimed in, grinning. Broke both legs skiing. Ran a marathon the next year. Stronger bones, the doc said. Sylar's claws trembled as he snatched Nexora's data tablet. The implications were staggering. This explains everything, he muttered. Their casual disregard for injuries, their willingness to risk damage, their indifference to pain. Sir, an assistant interrupted. The cellular activity. It's accelerating. Almost as if, our scanning triggered an enhanced repair response. Nexora finished, her professional facade collapsing. They don't just heal, they adapt, they improve. Ryder watched the aliens descend into chaos, wondering what all the fuss was about. For him, it was just another broken bone. For them, it was a nightmare. Commander, Nexora whispered, her voice trembling. We need to report this to the High Council. If humans grow stronger from injuries, this isn't a campaign anymore. It's an existential threat. As the aliens fled the laboratory, leaving Ryder strapped to the examination table, he couldn't resist shouting after them, Hey, any chance I can get some painkillers before you declare war on human biology? The only reply was the sound of hurried footsteps and Dr. Nexora's distant voice yelling about maximum containment protocols. Ryder sighed, glancing at the empty room. Well, he muttered to himself, at least this'll make a great story for the grandkids. If these folks don't dissect me first. The emergency briefing room aboard the galactic command vessel Oblivion had never been so full. Officers crammed the chamber, their appendages fidgeting nervously as Dr. Nexora's holographic display illuminated the room with unsettling scans of human bone structures. As you can see, Nexora began, pointing to a close-up image of Ryder's rapidly healing leg. The response to structural damage isn't just repair, it's outright enhancement. At the back of the room, Commander Sylar leaned against the wall, watching his military council unravel. Officers whispered among themselves, and a few openly twitched in fear. Intelligence analyst Major Tyker, breathing heavily through his respiratory filters, was on the verge of collapse. According to our latest threat assessment, squeaked analyst Pilix, her data streams projected onto the room's central console. Humans have been documented intentionally inflicting injuries to improve physical performance. Impossible, someone shouted from the crowd. Pilix adjusted her translator, then explained this intercepted human entertainment feed. They call it bodybuilding, where they deliberately damage muscle fibers to grow them stronger. They're weaponizing their own cellular repair systems. The room erupted in horrified clicks and murmurs. A junior officer fainted on the spot. Dr. Nexora raised her voice over the chaos. There's more. We've uncovered human medical records referencing something called Wolf's Law. Their bones grow denser and stronger under stress and impact. Commander Zyler observed as waves of panic swept through his officers. Several immediately submitted requests for transfer to the diplomatic corps. But surely, General Krail said from the front row, desperation lacing his voice, even humans have their limits. That's just it, Pilix interrupted, pulling up more data. Look at their military training philosophies. They actually embrace a concept called, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not just a motto, it's their biological doctrine. A stunned silence filled the room as security footage played on the main screen. It showed Morgan Ryder in the medical bay, casually performing stretches while his leg remained encased in a cast. By the twin sons, General Krail whispered, his voice barely audible. They begin their enhancement processes before the initial healing is even complete. Wait until you see this, Nexora added grimly, bringing up another scan. The room collectively gasped as the image revealed dense calcium deposits reinforcing Ryder's broken bone. In 6 weeks, she continued, this bone will be stronger than the original structure. 6 weeks, a voice whimpered from the crowd. And that's just the physical aspect, Major Tykor added, looking pale. When questioned about his pain levels, the subject laughed and replied he hesitated before continuing. You should have seen me after rugby season. The room spiraled into chaos. Officers shouted over one another, security protocols were hastily revised, and someone at the back began praying to the ancestral gods. There's another saying humans have, Pilix added nervously, her voice barely audible over the noise. Get back on the horse that threw you. They actively encourage repeating activities that caused severe trauma. Dr. Nexora, General Krail stammered, his composure fracturing. Are you telling us we can't disable their combat forces permanently? That we might actually be making them stronger? Exactly, Nexora replied, her tone grim. Our standard attrition-based warfare strategies are utterly ineffective. Injuring humans doesn't remove them from battle, it enhances their capabilities. Every injury is a potential upgrade. Commander Zyler watched in disbelief as his once proud invasion force dissolved into a panicked mess. One officer curled into a ball under his console, muttering about indestructible human bones. There are even reports, Pilix continued, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper, of humans replacing entire joints with synthetic implants and returning to combat. They aren't just healing, they're upgrading. The lights dimmed as another scan appeared on the central display. This one showed the metallic implants within an elderly human's hip. 3 more officers fainted. That's not all, Nexora added, pointing to an ancient human medical document. For centuries, humans have been deliberately breaking and resetting bones for reinforcement. They call it treatment, but we know the truth, it's biological warfare research. General Krail shot to his feet, his ceremonial armor clanking loudly. Are you saying that every time we've injured them in battle, we've been making them more resilient? Worse, Pilix replied, activating another file. They've developed specialized facilities for this purpose. They call them gyms and CrossFit boxes. They voluntarily subject themselves to stress and mechanical trauma to trigger these enhancements. Their entire society is structured around weaponizing their repair mechanisms. The room fell silent, save for the nervous clicking of appendages and the occasional faint whimper. Commander Seiler surveyed the room, now filled with trembling officers and defeated generals. One last thing, Nexora said quietly, replaying footage from the medical bay. When we asked the human subject how many times bones could be broken and rehealed, he simply smiled and said. She hesitated. Want to find out? The evacuation alarms blared before she even finished speaking. The briefing room emptied in a frenzy, leaving behind scattered data tablets and the heavy scent of fear. Back in the medical bay, blissfully unaware of the chaos he'd caused, Morgan Ryder resumed his stretches, oblivious to the terrified stares of every alien who passed his window. In the High Command war chamber, chaos continued to spread as security feeds looped footage of Ryder peacefully napping, his leg propped up on a pillow. 3 days, Supreme General Dreythus slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. It's been 3 days since this human was captured, and our entire military doctrine is in ruins. Commander Zyler watched his superior pace the chamber, all 4 of Dreythus' eyes twitching sporadically. Around them, the Galactic Council dissolved into whispered arguments and nervous glances. This was no longer a war. It was survival. The rest of the War Council sat frozen in silence, except for Admiral Kreiner, who had been shedding his scales in a continuous stress molt since the morning briefing. The latest intelligence. His unsettling Supreme General Dreythus began, his usually commanding voice cracking under pressure. Not only do humans heal, but they also meticulously document the process. Look at this. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a series of human medical records. They call these X-rays, Dreythus continued. They track their so-called enhancement process with before and after images. It's like a biological upgrade catalog. Admiral Kreiner brushed off the remnants of his molted scales and muttered, "Perhaps we should consider diplomacy." Diplomacy, General Xerx's outraged shriek startled the room. With beings who respond to injuries by growing stronger. Have you seen the latest report on what they call physical rehabilitation? The gathered officers collectively shuddered. Dr. Nexora's recent analysis of human rehabilitation protocols had already driven 3 intelligence analysts into early retirement. They even have specialized warriors for this purpose, Nexora explained, pulling up a slide. They call them physical therapists. Their entire role is to guide humans through the enhancement process. Dreth gestured toward another screen. Look at this so-called gymnasium. The display showed humans lifting weights, doing push-ups, and performing other exercises. Several council members averted their gazes, visibly disturbed. By the eternal stars, one officer whispered, they choose to endure this voluntarily. It gets worse, Commander Xyler interjected, his voice grim. We've intercepted communications about an event called a marathon, apparently. Humans voluntarily run to the point where their muscles break down. For fun. The room erupted into chaos. Admiral Kreiner's molting accelerated, and General Xerx's mandibles quivered violently. Strategically, Drethis barked, regaining control. Dr. Nexora, your findings. Nexora emerged from her station, looking utterly exhausted. The human specimen has initiated what he calls stretching exercises, despite our best efforts. We have no idea what this ritual truly entails, but it appears to enhance flexibility and accelerate recovery. And the bone repair, Drethis demanded. Accelerating, Nexora confirmed, pulling up fresh scans. The calcium deposits are precisely where he predicted they would form. In 5 weeks, the bone will likely be stronger than it was before the injury. The silence that followed was suffocating. Supreme General, the logistics officer, spoke hesitantly. Our combat simulations are now invalid. How do we calculate attrition rates against a species that treats damage as an opportunity for improvement? Dreth slumped into his chair, looking weary. Show them the sports footage. The screens filled with images of human athletic events, rugby matches, boxing bouts, martial arts competitions. The council watched in horror as humans repeatedly subjected themselves to impacts that would have left any other species crippled. They do this. For entertainment, Admiral Kreiner murmured, now standing in a small pile of his own discarded scales. No, Drethis corrected grimly. They call it training. Their entire species is systematically conditioned to view damage as a means to grow stronger. Even their younglings participate in these sports. The logistics officer fainted, and no one moved to help him. Commander Xyler finally spoke, his voice low and filled with dread. There's more. The human specimen mentioned something called getting back in shape. We believe it's some sort of post-healing enhancement protocol. That was the breaking point. The War Council dissolved into pandemonium. Admiral Kreiner molted his last remaining scale and had to be escorted out. 3 generals submitted their resignations on the spot. Someone began frantically devouring emergency rations. Meanwhile, on the central screen, Morgan Ryder continued napping peacefully, his leg propped up on a pillow. Oblivious to the chaos he had caused, Ryder yawned and shifted position, completely unaware that the galaxy's most powerful military was on the verge of collapse. Elsewhere, the Oblivion's mess hall buzzed with panicked whispers. Private Nexon leaned over the nutrition dispenser, speaking in hushed tones. I heard the human can regrow entire limbs. My cousin's commander saw it on a medical scan. That's nothing, Sergeant Viler countered, glancing over his shoulder nervously. Someone in medical told me they store backup bones inside their existing ones. They call it bone marrow. The rumors spread like wildfire through the ship's corridors. By mid-cycle, the galley was a breeding ground for increasingly wild theories about human biology. They drink a white liquid called milk, a communications officer whispered, eyes wide with terror. It's full of bone-growing crystals. They start consuming it as infants to grow extra skeletal structures. A maintenance worker joined the conversation, pale and shaking. My sister works in intelligence. She says humans have these things called growth plates that keep making their bones bigger, and they never stop. Attention, all personnel, the ship's AI announced sternly. Disregard all unauthorized information regarding human biological capabilities. This is a matter of military security. But the crew wasn't listening. In the gymnasium, a group of elite warriors huddled together, trading horror stories. I saw the footage, one whispered. The human was doing something called physical therapy. He was forcing his bones to heal faster just by sheer determination. I heard they replaced their teeth, another added, shivering. They just pull them out and grow new ones. Twice. No, a third warrior interjected, clicking his mandibles in alarm. They have these things called fingerprints. Unique patterns. And if their hands get damaged, they regenerate those too. It's like a backup for their backup systems. Meanwhile, down in engineering, Chief Engineer Vextor addressed his team. Humans developed their regeneration abilities through a practice called parkour. They jump off buildings to strengthen their bones. It's deliberate. The tension aboard the Oblivion had reached a boiling point, and Morgan Ryder, blissfully unaware, stretched his arms and thought about asking for a second pillow. And that's not even the worst part, Chief Engineer Vextor told his wide-eyed staff. They have these so-called healing rituals casts. They encase their damaged limbs in a hard shell. But inside, their bones aren't just healing, they're evolving. In the medical bay observation room, 2 security guards stood silently, watching Morgan Ryder perform his morning stretches. I heard the first guard whispered that they can move bone strength from one limb to another. It's called calcium redistribution. Please stop talking, begged his partner, visibly pale. Meanwhile, the ship's counseling office was overwhelmed with traumatized personnel. They have a battle cry, one soldier sobbed. What doesn't kill them makes them stronger. It's not just a saying, it's their biology. By the evening cycle, the rumors had reached apocalyptic proportions. The ship's bulletin board was shut down after being flooded with wild eyewitness accounts of human regeneration. They can sense when bones are about to break, one post claimed, and then they reinforce them preemptively. Another chimed in, their healing accelerates under pressure. They get stronger during battle. They eat a bone-strengthening food called calcium supplements, added yet another. It's like performance enhancers for their skeletal system. Commander Zyler sat in his quarters, sifting through the latest batch of resignation letters while his internal communicator buzzed nonstop with increasingly hysterical reports. Sir, his aide's voice crackled through the speaker. The troops are saying humans use something called insurance. Apparently, they plan their healing in advance. Zyler sighed deeply, gazing out the window at Morgan Ryder cheerfully waving at his guards while performing leg lifts in his medical bed. Sir, the aide continued, there's another rumor. Humans break their own bones just to prove they can heal. They call it showing off. Completely oblivious to the mass hysteria he was causing, Ryder turned to one of his guards. Hey, he said casually, want to hear about the time I broke both arms skateboarding? 2 months later, I was back on the board. The guard fainted. The day the invasion fell apart began like any other. Morgan Ryder was scheduled for his first supervised walk, exactly 6 weeks after his capture. No one anticipated that it would trigger the largest military retreat in galactic history. Looking good, Mr. Ryder chirped the medical droid as Morgan took his first step, unaided. Bone density readings are at 115% of their original strength. Through the observation window, Commander Zyler watched with mounting horror as the human walked on what had been a shattered leg just weeks ago. A small crowd of medical staff and guards gathered in the corridor, whispering frantically. He's activating the enhanced bone structure, one murmured. The prophecy was true, said another, trembling. They do come back stronger. Look at that smile, someone else hissed. He's not even trying to hide his power. Morgan, utterly unaware of the growing panic, began his prescribed leg exercises. You know, he called out to his stunned audience, I think it actually feels better than before I broke it. The observation room emptied so fast it created a vacuum. Moments later, alarms blared across the starship. Alert! Alert! Human biological enhancement protocol in progress. This is not a drill. Seiler rushed to the bridge, only to find chaos. His tactical officer was curled under a console, rocking back and forth, muttering, "They just keep getting stronger." Sir, a communications officer screamed. The human is requesting something called a treadmill for advanced regeneration training. The bridge descended into pandemonium. 3 officers handed in their resignations on the spot. Others began stress-eating emergency rations. Admiral Kreiner, who had only just regrown his scales, began molting again. "Get it on screen," Seiler ordered, instantly regretting the command. The main view screen displayed Ryder jogging in place. He was explaining something to the medical droid. "Yeah," Ryder said, stretching casually. "Once this heals up completely, I'm thinking about getting back into marathon training. Maybe even some rock climbing. Gotta rebuild that strength, you know." "By the 7 moons," someone whispered, "he's preparing for the next enhancement cycle." Supreme General Drethis, watching via hologram, finally broke. "Retreat," he shrieked, his image flickering as he presumably ran from his command center. "Full retreat. Get us out of this system." No one needed to be told twice. The evacuation began with unprecedented efficiency. Squadrons abandoned their posts, and the ship's AI had to remind personnel to use escape pods instead of leaping into space in blind panic. Morgan Ryder stepped out of the medical bay just in time to see hundreds of aliens running past, screaming about human biological warfare and unstoppable regeneration. "Hey," he called to a passing guard, "did I miss something?" The guard took one look at Ryder's newly healed leg and fainted dead away. Within hours, the entire invasion fleet had broken orbit. Emergency transmissions flooded the galactic network. "Warning, do not engage humans. Repeat, do not engage. Earth classified as extreme hazard. Negotiation strongly recommended." Back on the fleeing flagship, Commander Seiler recorded his final log entry. "We never stood a chance. Their healing abilities defy all known laws of biology. Today I watched one of them recover from a disabling injury and casually discuss making himself stronger. May the stars protect anyone foolish enough to provoke these unkillable beings." He paused, then added, "This is Commander Seiler signing off. I think I'll retire. Maybe become a space farmer." As the last ships vanished from Earth's orbit, Morgan Ryder stood by his medical bay window, watching their retreat with bemusement. "All this over a broken leg," he mused. "Wait until they hear about my sister. She had her appendix out and ran a triathlon 3 months later." Somewhere in deep space, several alien ships abruptly changed course at the mere mention of human surgical capability. And so, 1 broken leg, 6 weeks of standard medical care, and a galaxy-wide misunderstanding led to the shortest invasion in Earth's history.